Hello and welcome to this episode of G-Talk, Ask the Expert. GLP is a leading global investment manager and business builder, investing in, developing and managing assets in logistics real estate. In Europe, GLP operates in 12 countries with over 270 assets under management, totaling 7.9 million square metres, with another 1 million square metres under development. Today's subject is German logistics, and with me to discuss this is expert in the field, Patrick Frank, who is Country Director for Germany with GLP. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Paul. Thanks
Hello.
for the invite. Really exciting to be here.
Good, nice to see you. Perhaps we can start by finding out a bit about you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've started with one of the big four accounting firms some 20 years ago. And then later on, I slipped into the real estate sector already back then, focusing on logistic real estate. So in my career at various stations covering the asset management part, so the caretaking part, strategic caretaking part of assets as well as transactional parts. And ultimately, I now ended up being responsible for GLP's activities in Germany, covering asset management, transactions, as well as the development part of it.
And when did you join GLP?
I joined GLP last year in May 21.
Okay. Well, before we find out what GLP is working on, perhaps we can set the scene by looking at the German logistics market overall. I read that it's the biggest logistics market in Europe.
Yes, it is, Paul. So Germany has the size of the UK and France combined together. So just as a result from its very strong economy, just as a result from its very good locations in the center of Europe, really combining the west with the east and the north with the south of Europe.
Yes, of course, a massive number of German customers. There's 82 million German customers. There's 9 countries all around it. And it services the 500 million European customers as well.
Absolutely. This is the local demand, but we are also serving, when it comes to exporting goods, we are serving China and all other European countries, of course, ultimately driving the demand for logistics space.
Yes, Germany is the largest EU economy. It's also the third biggest exporter in the world, the third biggest importer. More goods pass through Germany than any other EU country. Why is that? I mean, you've already mentioned the manufacturing, but what else is going on in Germany?
Well, as already outlined, is of course the perfect location right in the center of Europe. It's strong manufacturing arms. It's the fact that lots of goods coming in from the ports of Hamburg, from the ports of Rotterdam, and from the ports of Antwerp, and then being shipped into Germany. So just as a side information, these 3 ports have the same size as the Singaporean ports. So,
okay, and so it's a big country. You've mentioned the ports there, which are obviously in the north. But what about the other sectors? Is logistics in Germany divided into different sectors, and what do they look like?
Well, generally, it's important to understand that Germany is a very fragmented market. So we do not have 1 or 2 or 3 centralized markets. We generally talk about the big 7 markets, including Berlin, including Hamburg. The Rhine-Ruhr region alone has an amount of 40 million inhabitants, which drives already a lot of demand. When talking about regional dedication of sectors, we can say that, for instance, the southern part of Germany has an influence of automotive industry. You know, we have the big prime car manufacturers such as the Porsche, Mercedes, and BMW being more located in the south, whereas the northern part, or the eastern part in particular, still provides sufficient space for bigger sheds for the use of e-commerce.
You mentioned 7 regional markets there. What is GLP doing in some of those markets, or where is its focus? What does it see happening?
Well, the big 7 German markets, they include Berlin, for instance, where we're currently developing some 50,000 square meters for one customer as a BTS, with further 70,000 square meters available in that particular space.
The BTS is build to suit.
That is a build to suit. It's kind of a made to measure suit for an individual client. Further than that, we have currently a development very well proceeding in the southwest of Germany, close to Mannheim, That is a brownfield redevelopment, and we're going to build this on a spec basis, so no pre-let, fully speculative.
And what's the main focus of it? Sort of Berlin is presumably e-commerce serving the city. What about Mannheim? Is that the same, or is it?
No, Mannheim has very much a very strong local economy, including chemical activities, including very strong SMEs, so smaller mid-sized enterprises. And we're already facing very strong interest from all sorts of sectors. E-commerce, because we from the region of Mannheim can easily cater Frankfurt, cater the Mannheim region, including Heidelberg, and if not the Stuttgart region, which is also one of the very most sought-after logistical locations in Germany.
And what's again for the same thing across the board? E-commerce, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, or
we could cover all of it. Some parts of the building are even prepared for the storage of dangerous goods, so we're really wide open for every kind of use. The massive take-up of our portfolio, which now amounts to approximately 1.7 million square meters, is driven by e-commerce. But I have to say, still the portfolio is very well diversified. And we are, for the time being at least, we are at a level of 100% occupied. So we do not have 1 square meter available for the time being.
Okay, and if you're fully leased, you say, that means that land acquisition and finding new space must be a priority for you.
That is the absolute key for us. Yeah. So we work out of 3 different offices in those regional markets, out of Hamburg, out of Frankfurt, and out of Munich, to cover this, what we call development.
Okay. What sort of things have you got in your pipeline?
We have a variety spread over whole Germany currently in our pipeline. We are very well advanced and been positioned to secure land and have already secured building permissions. And what really probably distinguishes us a little bit from our competitors that we are still willing to develop on a so-called speculative basis. So without any pre-commitment from any customers, we start developing and are pretty confident we get the space leased before completion.
Yeah, I mean, hearing from sort of logistics here in the UK and other countries that obviously obtaining land is difficult. How hard is it in Germany? How difficult is the land acquisition process?
That is one of the headwinds we are currently experiencing. So land availabilities, in particular those regions we find very interesting for logistic real estate developments in the region larger than 4 hectares, 5 hectares, is almost no longer available. So how we are trying to bypass that is we look deep into so-called brownfield redevelopment scenarios. That, number one, of course, takes a lot more time. Number two, costs a lot more money. But that is the only way of growth that we are currently seeing, as greenfield developments or greenfield land is no longer available for that intended use.
Okay, so you've got, and that's right across Germany. Tell us a little about your team. You've already mentioned your office locations there, but what about the team on the ground? They're all over Germany?
They're all over Germany. So we have a fantastic team that has now grown up to 25 people. And we are still looking for further help. That is the good news. We are spread over three offices, as said before, and as such are in a position to act regionally. And that is key for us, really, to divide the German market actually into 3 parts: northern, mid out of Frankfurt, and the southern part out of Munich, just to be in a position to act regionally, not only from a business development point of view, but also from an asset management point of view. So people taking care for the buildings and, of course, for our customers also on a regional basis.
And you're quite proud of the training that you offer your employees and the upskilling.
No, absolutely. That is key for us, not to train people only on job, really to give them the opportunity, to give them the space to maneuver, but also to give them knowledge. So we have a particular so-called G Academy where you can upload particular courses, but beyond that, every of our employee has his own budget per annum just to making sure he's getting educated in the right way. We want him to be educated.
The complexity of the logistics space and the accreditation schemes, again, tell us a little bit about the G Academy and those accreditation training elements.
There are various elements. It's mainly meant to improve your soft skills on the one hand, but also your technical skills on the other hand. So we have courses about communication. We have courses, a very important one about leadership and leadership styles. We have courses about real estate valuation. But parallel to that, we also have a course that is called Leader of the Future, really sponsoring young and eager individuals growing better into the business.
And then you've got collaboration across GLP as a whole, because GLP is now in 12 countries in Europe. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's not only a European collaboration, it's basically more a global collaboration. So we are in deep exchange with our colleagues from China, trying to leverage existing relationships, trying to support customers on their global approach. So we are in the position basically to help customers setting up their business almost in every country in the world.
Okay. Yes, of course, because logistics is a global operation these days, and parts coming in from everywhere before they're distributed, or in e-commerce to local customers and consumers. ESG, we've had several podcasts about it, and it's popped up in numerous places in the GLP Ask the Expert thing. It's important for Germany as well. How do you approach ESG in Germany? In fact, I should just point out that ESG stands for Environmental, Social and Governance, for those who've forgotten. But...
No, absolutely. It's a feature that not only GLP is deeply looking into it, it's also our customers, and ultimately their customers are deeply looking into it. So latest requirements, demands for space, there's no option you can do that without having your building properly certified, without really providing features such as heat pumps, for instance, helping us making the buildings more independent from fossil sources. There's no way that we can build a building now without any photovoltaic system, which, by the way, is key to any sustainable approach.
So that's good sustainability features, like you say. You've got heat pumps, you've got solar panels, and that releases that independence on fossil fuels. Any other sustainability elements that Germany is very proud of?
Absolutely. So we're very proud of the fact that all our newly constructed buildings carry the so-called gold standard of the German Building Council of Sustainability. And we're very proud of the fact that we are building better than required by law in terms of, for instance, insulation.
Okay. We've lived through pretty uncertain times with COVID and now the economic crises around the world and the war in Ukraine. How do you see the current situation, and how do you see the market developing in 2, 3, 5 years' time?
Well, first of all, COVID was a driver of logistics demand. We've seen e-commerce sales going up in a way it never grew in the past before. These days, of course, opposed to the booming times, we now see different times in terms of costs for infrastructure, for gas. We see massive increased costs for energy in general. We see increased costs for service charges in general. So a lot of the things are tough to influence for us. But what we're going to do is really build to the highest standards, being in a position to build efficient building. And even that includes also, of course, cost-efficient buildings. We are now at a point, we've seen probably when it comes to real estate valuations, we've seen peak by February this year, right before, of course, Ukrainian war started. Given the fact that ECB, Fed are the only instruments they have just to push inflation down is increase of interest rate. And that, of course, hits the real estate sector or many sectors per se. Investors might see that bonds are now an interesting issue, but we still see logistic real estate as a superstar. We still see a typical good hedge against inflation. We see really a steady demand and income stream. So that's, obviously then rising energy costs really focuses businesses on the cost of energy during occupation of a building or a tenancy for your customers there. What other trends can you see happening? Nearshoring and onshoring. Deglobalization is something that I've read as a phrase that covers that. Tell us a little bit about what the business case for that is. Yeah, absolutely. That is nearshoring, allied shoring is, of course, a result of the consequences that manufacturers, logistic firms, that the market has been facing during the COVID crisis. So that was exactly at a time when the heavy dependence on Asia, on China in particular, became obvious, very obvious. For instance, everyone remembers the interruption of one ship during the time when the Suez Canal was just blocked.
It got stuck in the Suez Canal, and that was a real crisis for everyone with
ships
backed up.
It sounds like one river, a boat gets stuck, but that had serious consequences in terms of availability of parts the simply manufacturing industries needed. So the idea behind this allied shoring, nearshoring, is the fact just to increase the storage amount of goods here very close by factories where those particular parts are just needed.
Yeah, so businesses, particularly in manufacturing, are looking at their stock inventories and working out where the critical bottlenecks are in their own manufacturing process and wanting to store them nearby to their factories. Have you got an example of that at all?
For instance, I think one part that was dramatically missing in the German automotive industries were chips for really for xenon lights for every part of the building. So there were thousands cars being completed, but one chip was missing, so they couldn't be delivered to the customers. And that is a very good example. That one tiny part of a car or any other machine is just missing, and it really prevents you from servicing your customers. No, absolutely.
So, with so much going on in logistics, what's going to be your immediate focus?
Focus will be in the next couple of months and years to further drive the growth of our position and of our company in the German market. Secondly, along with that is team development is really one of my focuses. So these two combined are priority number one.
And then obviously the development pipeline that you've got. Are there any particular ones that you want to wrap up the podcast with?
Absolutely. There's one really exciting development currently underway that is in the northern part of Germany, close to the city of Bremen, where we are making good progress developing some 180,000 square meters for a big e-retailer. Completion is envisaged for December this year. So that one is really, in terms of its sheer size, outstanding. And it's just a fantastic achievement of the project management team.
Okay, well, look forward to that. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us today, Patrick Frank.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul.
That's it for today. My name is Paul Shearer. Have a lovely day. Thanks for listening to this episode of G-Talk Ask the Expert. You can find other episodes in this series in all the usual podcast places. Be sure to subscribe. You can also find out more on GLP Europe's website, eu.glp.com.